I think this is the perfect time to get better at anything that you're doing, right? Like when there is no set answers of what to do, like nobody knows when things are getting back to normal. So use this time to develop.
Yeah.
Use this time to figure out something that you've been wanting to do for a long time.
Yeah.
Use this time to not worry about what's happening tomorrow. You know, like start paying attention to what's happening today. What you can do today.
Right.
What can I make better today? Then all of a sudden, if you do the same thing tomorrow and the same thing the next day and the same thing the next, oh my God, like I'm making monumental strides every day to get better at something that before I wasn't even paying attention to. This is the Savage Hour Podcast. We take you inside the mind of fighters, athletes, and entrepreneurs. Don't miss an episode. Follow and subscribe.
Yeah.
All right.
Rolling.
Cool. Welcome back to the Savage Hour Podcast. I'm your host, Chad George. And today I'm really excited about this episode. I have my longtime friend, closest thing I have to a brother, Livi Vigna, with me. He is the guitarist and songwriter for the band For the Kids. And he has literally seen everything that's happened in my life from as far back. Actually, he remembers more than I do.
First day of kindergarten.
First day of kindergarten. Well, so how did that happen? So, like, because you and I think, are the only ones that know that story. So, how did we meet? Like that storyline in kindergarten. Like, what happened there?
We were playing with airplanes.
Okay.
And
was that yesterday or when we were in kindergarten?
It was the first day of kindergarten, and there were these little white plastic airplanes, and we were playing with them, and I wanted to play with some too, and you wouldn't let me play with them, so we had a little bit of a tussle over the airplanes, and then that's how we became best friends.
Here's the thing. So that was in kindergarten, and now we're what? Pushing 40 years old, and we have seen each other's lives completely transformed from you had your kid first.
Yeah.
By
22.
By 20, you were 22 years old when you had your kid, and now we were just talking about it. And I've got my son who is now 5 months old, and we were talking that in 2 years you're going to be sending your kid away to college.
Yeah.
And that is just crazy to think about, because I remember when Holden was born, and I was like, man, like Levi's a dad, and now here I am. A dad, almost in that same phase, and like I've been able to watch your son grow and watch your whole life transform from, you know, going from like sales to where you are now and making the transitions. And I know you've seen that in mine as well, where I've gone from, you know, one stage of my life when we were kids. I mean, because you know what we did then and where we are now are completely different spectrums.
Yeah.
And how was I growing up?
Tireless is probably the right word. Literally could not sit down for 5 seconds. An entire bundle of energy. Compassionate. I remember in first grade we had that, we called ourselves the Caring Club.
I do not remember this. I don't even know if we should talk about this. Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
The Caring Club?
Yeah. You made it up, not me.
Oh my God.
Because this kid, Keith, was playing on bars and he hurt himself in his, you know.
Okay.
And he was crying. So we went over there and we were like, oh, you okay? And then we went and got a grown-up.
Okay.
And then you said, we're going to be the Caring Club now. And then we went home. And then we went to your mom's house after school, your parents, and we told her about our Caring Club.
How is this the first time I've heard this?
How do you not remember it?
I don't remember last week. One of us has been punched in the head for many years.
I have a weird, odd memory. Maybe that's ties into, you know, being a musician in a way.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, I know that, speaking of musicians, like I know, like we both, like a lot of people don't know this, I played guitar when we were growing up. I was never amazingly talented at it, you know, but I could play a little bit.
You were in a band?
I was in a band, and you, on the other hand, were always extremely into music.
Yeah.
you started off with, I'm probably gonna really fuck this up, but you started off with the baritone?
Yeah.
Okay, so, right,
Yeah.
so that, and you were in,
And you played trumpet.
thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
That's, so he brings up the carrying club, he brings up the trumpet. I am no longer...
I have all the secrets, all the dirt, and I know all the truths. I know all of them.
We're gonna end this episode right now. No,
But yeah, I started off with baritone. That led me into the rest of the, lower brass and horn family, baritone, trombone, trumpet. Eventually tuba, which was fun, not sexy, but fun. And in the midst of that, my parents, as yours did, actually the same year, when we were in 7th grade, we got guitars for Christmas. Remember that?
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah.
I do remember. That I remember.
Yeah.
I remember.
So
And I
we both
remember
got guitars when we were 13
that's
for
when,
Christmas.
when grunge rock was the thing. I mean, we
Yeah.
had Nirvana, Kurt Cobain. I mean, this
He
was
had
like
just
the
left,
this was where grunge rock was like the thing, and everybody thought it was cool to be just dirty and grimy.
Yeah.
And
I don't think that ever changed.
it didn't change, but it was different then, right? Like
It was different.
everybody did that like intention, like
There was a look that
Yes.
went along with that era that we don't really, see in its full form today. Like the commitment to not showering by some kids.
yeah.
Or
Well
the
now
commitment to,
it's you want to have that appearance that you look like that, but you were the
but
cleanest
you're
guy
not,
on the
but you're
planet.
not really like that.
Yeah,
yet.
yeah.
Or the way they would dye their hair with Kool-Aid or peroxide.
Why would somebody ever dye their
Instead
hair?
of like actually just dyeing their hair with stuff that like is meant
Why
to
would
dye hair.
anybody do that? Because I know I would have never done that.
You dyed your hair constantly. I was like, I literally had a flashback of like every time you dyed your hair all the way up until your 20s.
Do you remember when we were in junior high, I got suspended for dyeing my eyebrows?
Yeah, that looked terrible too.
I dyed my eyebrows, I think green or
Yeah.
blue. I don't remember the color, but I remember there was a big problem with gangs in the school in the outlying area.
Oh, yeah,
and
that time,
that when I dyed my eyebrows, I don't remember why I did it or why I thought it was cool to do that. But I remember I got in trouble by the school because they thought it was gang related.
Yeah.
And
You were
yeah, I was probably
still passing for 4th grade.
Probably. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to remember when high school, I wasn't even 5 feet tall. I graduated high school under 5 feet tall.
Yeah, Chad looked young even at graduation. He had just a young face that changed in the next couple of years. But yeah, definitely looked very young until you were definitely an adult.
Yeah, that adult thing, still trying to figure that out. All right, so we started playing guitars, but Levi really started excelling with his music, and he started getting in different bands. He started performing at different places, and I know you've been in a lot of different bands over the years, and the big thing I want to talk about today is like the commitment to taking risks, right? And I know it's something you and I have talked about for years now, and it was one of the things that when I started fighting, it was one of those things that nobody really understood why I started doing it and why I let all my things go that I've been working towards so I could pursue this thing. And I truly believe that when you are willing to take the risk, everything in life begins to get better because you're all in. You're not half committed to anything. And you see the greatest musicians, you see the greatest artists, you see the greatest performer in anything or even business. And it's once they've completely taken the risk on themselves and not worrying about fulfilling anybody else's desires of anything, that's when they can start flourishing. Even if the money isn't there, all of a sudden they start living life and they can become happier. And that's one of the things that I just decided I wanted to do when I started fighting. It was like, I wasn't enjoying the art field anymore. I wasn't doing that stuff. I hated working with clients. And this thing about fighting just gripped me.
Yeah.
And it was like, I had no way to explain it to anybody because nobody I knew was doing it.
Right.
And so I didn't even have people I could look to be like, hey, are you happy? It was something I was doing, and for the longest time, even my parents didn't understand it.
Right.
And it was funny when my dad finally started like playing the game with me. He was like, oh, well, why don't you fight this? I was like, when did you start paying attention?
Yeah. I actually remember when I got back in the music scene, you were like, you were kind of excited to be able to be like, okay, now you understand a little bit more what I've been talking about and, you know, kind of railing against in a way. So I definitely I take on that type of a mindset a little bit more now, not as much as when I was, you know, younger. But
well, and that's the thing. Like a lot of people think that at any age of your life, right? You're like, oh, I'm too late to start something.
Right.
I'm too late to get into this. I'm too late for this, or I missed this. I missed that. And listen, like, if you think that, then yes, it is too late. You've missed it.
Right.
But if we put a limitation on just what we are capable of doing to make us happy because of our age, then we're already losing the opportunity for it. You know, we see other bands or we see other businesses or we see other people and they might not fit where we are in our life, and we start comparing ourselves
right.
to them, and that is why I can't be there.
Right.
Instead of being like, okay, that worked for them.
Right.
I'm making this work for me. You know, and once we start removing the limitations that are on ourselves that we set, all of a sudden we start seeing these possibilities of what makes us happy, what allows us to grow, what allows us to do new things. And just because we fail at something that doesn't work, I'm sure you've been in bands that failed. Even
every one of them.
Right?
Yeah.
And
yeah. If any of them had succeeded, then more people would have heard of me by now, right? Yeah.
Right. But so, even with that, though, every single one of those, you grew from it.
Right. Yeah.
And then you continued on the path where that is where the development is. Right. A lot of people see that something fails and they take that as like, oh my God, I knew this was going to happen. Everything I do falls apart. And instead of looking at it constructively and being like, everything I do has led me to the next stage.
Yeah.
And if you take the learning blocks from that, you start becoming more aware that that's what's happening. Every time we fail, we actually get one step closer to what we're trying to achieve, because if we dissect it, it's like a lab project.
Yeah.
I'm able to take that data and apply it to the next thing. And now I'm learning what works, what doesn't work. And I know you've been part of some really, really talented bands, but you've never been happy. And that's one of the things that like we've talked about for years. And you know, I've tried to get through your head, and you've been open to listening, but I realized that it doesn't matter who delivers information. If the individual is not ready to like let themselves become themselves,
right? Yeah.
Then you're gonna start missing those keys. It's like trying to spit information of religion to somebody that doesn't care about religion. It doesn't matter how good the information is.
Right.
They're not ready to actually take it in for them. And I know recently, you know, you've been your band For the Kids is probably one of the top bands in Sacramento right now.
We enjoyed a good year before COVID happened, but yeah, we're
and that was the craziest thing. Like you guys were on an ascension, and then COVID hit. I mean, I remember when I was just in Sacramento. You guys were doing concert in the parks. That was an awesome show. And I mean, you guys have just been elevating and elevating and elevating, and all of a sudden, COVID hits.
Yeah.
And it's like, great, we're literally on this growth spurt. Everything's been building up.
Yeah, we were 2 weeks away from opening up for our first national, and then you know whatever doors were going to open up after that, you know, or whatever doors we were going to push open rather. But COVID presented a new set of opportunities, so we've adjusted, made some changes, and you know, to your point, it's also allowed us to take some risks.
Well, and that's the thing we're talking about, right? So when all this COVID stuff happened, it's easy for us to go, oh fuck, man, everything's like messed up, it's bad. Yeah, it is bad. It's bad for everybody. So how can we pivot and make adjustments? And I know not just your band is making some things, like you're doing some things now too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, so what are some of the pivots that you've made that realistically are pure risk?
I left the finance world and I've committed to being a full-time musician. So I left an industry that theoretically had a set amount of money for me to make, plus more if I did well. And I'm now going into something that it has no guarantees.
Well, and I mean, you and I have talked about this. Why now? I mean, because before you were saying, "Oh, I'm too old." There's, you know, it's too hard. Why now? I mean, there's the world's at a holding point. So
that's a great question. The more that I got involved in it, the more I could see the path of it happening, and the more I started remembering you know, what I really thought of myself doing when I was young and when I was a child. And I remembered like we talked about the other night, I remembered having this thought about when I was in high school, that when I grow up, I'm going to play music, whether it's in an orchestra, it's in a jazz quartet. You know, I didn't care what it was going to be. Like I just knew I was going to play music. And so that really kind of inspired me in a way again to make
so
this
you're
commitment.
Thinking about your younger self inspired you
Right.
as an adult now.
Yeah, and also, you know, I have a son, like we talked about, and he's 16, and he's incredibly intelligent, and
He's a musician too.
he's a musician too now, and he's, you know, I don't know that will be, you know, the path he chooses, but I want to teach him that there's no better time to start on that path than right now. And if that path changes, that's okay, but at that time, there's no better time to start on that path than right then. And, you know, because for me, all of the success I had in a former field was inconsequential to happiness. In fact, it felt burdensome.
I mean, that's one of the biggest things, right? Like, we've talked about it on my show, and I talked to it a lot about with people, is that money doesn't translate to happiness at
Right.
all. And a lot of people think it does. And, you know, this idea of more money, more problems, yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
But it's true because the stress levels elevate, the things you have to do to get the money elevate, and the problems become more. Like if you have a family, the more money you make, you probably have to work more.
Yeah.
So you're no longer even able to spend time with your family.
Right.
And like that's one of the things, like right now, that luckily I'm able to take advantage of. You know, with my son being born, this thing's going on 7 months now. My son's 5 months, and I'm able to spend time with my family.
You're home most of the time.
And but that also tells me that when we get past this, I'm doing that more.
Right.
I'm gonna spend more time with family.
Right.
You know,
Right.
as long as I've known you, like my life has been about grind, at least in my adult years.
Right.
And now I'm gonna pull back.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see you doing a little switch too, where it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm taking this time, and now you're pulling back from the work life too, and doing more what makes you happy.
Yeah, I'm
but
still
also
grinding, but in a different way.
But that's what I was also going to
yeah.
say. But now you're grinding in a way where it's like you're happy, and you're
Yeah.
also teaching that to your son.
Yeah.
About doing things that make you happy.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the, things I've really always tried to focus on with him. I brought him to almost every recording session I've ever had, or he's witnessed at least a portion of anything I've ever released with any project. And in the beginning he wasn't too interested, but now it's really cool because he wants to go to those sessions and he wants to be there to learn that. And so what a cool thing for me as a dad to be able to impart that kind of knowledge, or any dad with a son that's willing to
Right.
and wanting to accept it. But the risk here was, or I think the thing that I found that makes the risk possible is I had to leave that world to devote the time to this to get better.
That is the risk.
And
The financial security that you're leaving behind.
And I set myself up a few years ago where I could take some time off, as you know, and I did. And at that time, I wasn't thinking about going back to music, but I am who I am, so I played music every day for hours on end, and I just found myself getting better. And then, made the decision to go back to work, and kind of felt myself feeling a lot of the same ways I was before, but also got the confidence to start a new project with For the Kids. And For the Kids found some immediate traction in our local area fairly quickly, and we were well received, and we found ourselves on some very fun and exciting shows to play. You were there for a couple of those, and that kind of gave me the reality to say that, all right, if you really commit to this, there's actually a living here. And we won't get into too much form of what that entails. We talked about that now, but the point is that that 2 years was part of the process. Going back to work was part of the process. realizing that was not for me was the end of that process. And, recalling on that 2-year period where I just played music, and I realized that, hey man, if I'm gonna be a musician, I'm gonna be a musician. And that means I'm gonna work on my craft day in, day out like anybody else does on their craft.
A lot of people don't realize that. That's what it takes, right? Like if you want to be successful at anything, it can't be part-time. It can't even be full-time. It has to be who you are.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what separates the greatest of the greats with anything, right? They are so obsessed with their craft. And it doesn't matter what field it's in, but that's what separates them from everybody else.
Right.
Whether we get there to that level of, the greatest ever of all time, we don't know.
Yeah.
But if you dedicate your life to that, and that becomes who you are, then your life revolves around that, and you start doing things that just start coming to you, the opportunities, and even the things that you're looking at that you didn't see before because you had other distractions. But when you are an artist, you are a fighter, you are a martial art, whatever it is, right? Like, if that consumes you, then your life just becomes that, and it doesn't matter about anything else.
Yeah.
It's, like going back to teaching our kids, those values of teaching them, be all in with what you do, commit to something.
Yeah.
Now, I know both of our parents have done their best, when we were growing up. We want to teach our kids the things that are important to us.
Yeah.
And we also want to make sure that what we're teaching them are hopefully better than the choices that our parents made for us, and so forth and so forth.
Yeah,
right?
my dad had a saying, learn from my mistakes.
That's it. And so they try to teach us, but sometimes they're trying to teach us things that were good for them or bad for them, to not make those same mistakes they made.
Yeah.
But if we're given the tools at an early age to think for ourselves and kind of do what makes us happy, it's not about doing because that's what didn't work for them.
Right.
But our kids are their own person.
Right.
But if they're not taught to be their own person, then
Yeah.
it's gonna be a repeated cycle.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to live out like what they're trying to be you.
Right.
And
right.
at least now, I think we're also at a time where the idea of self-expression and becoming who you are is really more accepted.
That is, and I think that's also there's a lot of reasons. It's economy based, etc. I think when our parents were raising us, one of the things that the value, kind of hard work. Those things are obviously necessary, and they still are valuable today. That's not what I'm getting at, but companies don't hold the same loyalty to employees.
No.
There's just this different dynamic.
Well, that was what we talked about, right?
And
we talked about this the other day with companies, right?
Yeah.
They support you. They are for you as long as you're making them money.
Yeah.
But as soon as you're no longer making the money, all of a sudden that support system that you felt you had, they don't give a shit.
Yeah.
They're pulling back now because you're disposable to them.
Right.
But they will make you feel like you're accepted. They'll make you feel like you are the priority. They'll make you feel like you are their golden goose until they don't need you anymore.
Yeah. So, and that goes. I feel like that goes across every industry.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so there's things that are more unstable now. People are going to need to be more self-reliant, I feel like. And that's a lot easier to do when you're doing something you're passionate about. So if you're going to make that kind of a risk, you might as well do it with something that's going to, fuel you internally and not drive you into the ground again.
So let me ask you this. This is going to be kind of on the spot. You're probably going to have to think about this. But
Yeah.
if somebody were to ask you why should they take the risk, and you had to give them 3 reasons, give that person 3 reasons why they should take the risk if they're truly passionate about it. I know it's on the spot.
Yeah, that's pretty on the spot.
Right? I know. Let me, because I have a couple ideas.
I mean,
and
I can answer how like why I
That's all I'm looking for.
me.
Yeah, perfect. So
Okay.
give me three reasons.
First and foremost, what do I want to, teach forward?
Okay.
All right.
Love it.
Secondly, without going into too much detail, my own mental health, as we've talked, you know more about that. And then, thirdly, pride, self-fulfillment, I suppose. I mean, I felt pride being successful in the loan game and all that stuff, but like, this is a different level of, it's more about, I need to prove to myself that in this lifetime I can do this.
See, and that's huge, right? Like proving it to yourself, and I think that's the biggest thing, because that would be one of my answers.
Right.
Right, and I was asking those questions because I was wondering if that was going to pop up.
Right.
Because I think that's the biggest thing for any of us, right? Like, can I do this?
Yeah.
And that should always be the question that's on your forefront with everything that happens, because when we get hit with obstacles, it should be, can I overcome this?
Right.
We get hit with something we don't have an answer to. How do I find the answer to this? Or do I backtrack and say, fuck it, I'm giving up? It doesn't make sense, it's too hard.
Yeah.
And can I do this? Like, that is such a powerful question. And the reason why I asked for those three questions is because I think a big portion of that is, if you can answer that, then you are understanding why you're doing it.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And that's the thing. If you can't answer that, then you're not really going to have a reason why you're going to commit everything by giving up everything.
Right.
Like, that's a hard fucking thing to do, to give up everything, to commit to something that you don't have answers to, that you don't know where it's going, you don't know how you're going to survive, but you're going to do it
anyways.
Because if you have the passion, you know your why, you can answer the reasons of I can do this, then you're going to be able to do it no matter what the path's in front of you. It's going to be hard, but you're ready to do it. A lot of guys that commit to things will fall apart in the first 2 years because it's fucking hard.
Yeah. I mean, this is going to take, for me, probably so much longer than 2 years. I realize that.
It's already been longer than 2 years.
It has been longer than 2 years, exactly.
It's just, here's what it is.
But when you really commit to it, you end up finding yourself planning out how you're going to do it.
But that's it, right? Once you commit, all of a sudden your vision opens up. You're like, oh my God, I can all of a sudden see the road. I don't know how I'm going to get there.
Right.
But I can see the road now. Before, the road was clouded and muddied, and I really couldn't see anything in front of me. But now all of a sudden it's like this big, vast road.
And then as you get into it, there's new roads that come off those, and you start finding out that there's ways to do it that you didn't even know were there. Like, every time I play with a new musician, or what have you, like, I learn something about them that surprises me, and is also something that I can do to push myself more into this world. And that's, so what does that mean to me? I gotta go more. I gotta be at more places. I gotta be with more musicians. The only way to do that is to do it.
What's funny is when you go through that path and those roads start opening, roads that eventually open are roads that you never even considered a possibility when you had started on that commitment. Like, for me, I started fighting. This was all about me. This was like, I'm fighting. All of a sudden I'm traveling around the world.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I'm fighting against the best guys in the world. Then all of a sudden I'm opening a gym, and then all of a sudden I'm coaching athletes. Then all of a sudden I'm coaching the best fighters in the world.
Yeah.
And it's like, this all came from me just committing to get out of a field that I was unhappy in and going into this fighting world. And so I realized that the path that we set out on has so many other avenues and roads that we end up taking just by committing.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh my God, all of a sudden this makes me happy.
Another huge thing too is realizing that the road isn't straight. It's not going to be straight. If you expect it to be straight, it's going to disappoint you. And to be open to the accidents.
Yeah. The accidents, actually, it's funny because of course, in the moment of an accident, it's the most detrimental, devastating thing ever.
Right.
And then you go past that, and okay, what did I learn from that?
Right.
And now all of a sudden, that devastating thing that happened became almost a catalyst for what comes next.
Right.
And when what comes next happens, maybe completely takes a different route.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you're no longer pursuing what you wanted.
Off course.
No, it just means the course changed.
Yeah, it just means you didn't know the course. None of us do.
And that's it. And I think
just stay on it and just keep going with it, man. Like that's the way I feel about it. I mean,
that's exactly it. Stay the course, stay on it, accept the failures as necessary tools.
Right.
You know, man, and this, I'll tell you right now, this year is making us all understand what it means to not know what's happening next.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is no playbook. There is no. There's nobody to ask how to overcome this. You know, in sports and business, there's always been a book to read. Somebody that with mentorship.
Yeah.
Everybody's guessing now. Nobody knows. So
a lot of people like have asked me like, why are you doing that now? Like, why not right now? Like, are you kidding? There's like so many ways that things are gonna change. So like, there's gonna be so many places to put your energy into, and the opportunity just to get better at what you're doing right now. Like that's, if you're gonna be here, you know, kind of do something with it.
I think this is the perfect time to get better at anything that you're doing, right? Like when there is no set answers of what to do, like nobody knows when things are getting back to normal. So use this time to develop.
Yeah.
Use this time to figure out something that you've been wanting to do for a long time.
Yeah.
Use this time to not worry about what's happening tomorrow. You know, like start paying attention to what's happening today. What you can do today.
Right.
What can I make better today? Then all of a sudden, if you do the same thing tomorrow and the same thing the next day and the same thing the next, oh my God, like I'm making monumental strides every day to get better at something that before I wasn't even paying attention to.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, like you, that's exactly like you reminded me of my idol Barack Obama, but he says that, you know, progress is not, it's not giant leaps, it's tiny steps.
Yeah.
You know, it's incremental tiny steps, and that's what it is with anything. Any sort of progress is, it's a series of, you know, baby steps, really.
Well, think about a bridge, right?
Yeah.
Like at least in the olden days. Now it's a little bit different. But like in the olden days when a bridge was built, it was brick by brick.
Right.
You know, you needed to get from A to B, but the only way that was going to happen was one brick, the next brick, the next brick, take a break, you know, and then you kept going like that. I mean, that's the building blocks of how it's always been. But now we get jaded by it needs to be faster. It needs to be now. And you're never going to get there. You just got to have a little bit of patience.
Yeah.
Be willing to fail. Be willing to succeed. I believe that it's embracing the moment of everything, right? Because whether you fail or you succeed, it's all about the moment.
Yeah.
And then if you believe in the process, that's what's going to get you there. Don't believe in don't, that's not even believing. Don't emphasize the result of what happens in that moment.
Right.
Because the result is going to vary. Like the results you're getting now are going to be way different than the results we get in 6 months, 1 year, 10 years, because the situation's changing. So that result was just a moment. Go back to the process, work on the process, because the process is going to be everlasting. So the moment is going to give you the information that you need to apply to the process.
Right.
And that's what we're doing right now. At least I think so. I think that this whole COVID-19 shit is like allowing us to pay attention to the process.
Yeah, and the process is the necessary evil in a lot of ways to people. Like a lot of people have a hard time loving the process. They love the results, they love the idea, but if you love the process, then the results are kind of natural.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have to learn to love practice. I'm lucky right now in a way. I have, you know, some, you know, things that are keeping me afloat, right? But I can practice, and I love to practice. So I'm practicing something I love, you know.
And then like I know we've talked about, you set yourself up with goals and structures that you're gonna start rolling out, and it's like that's what it's about. And you're like, okay, practice your craft every day.
Yeah.
Like, don't just practice it. Be consumed by your craft.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, once you have a structure and a plan, Attack that, go back to the craft.
Right.
Attack that, go back to the craft.
Right. You can't ever leave the craft. You're never going to be so good that you can't practice.
Yeah.
That'll never be. That'll never happen. Right? Like in any field, like you're never so good that you know, can't have the process still there.
And we see that all the time too, because it happens when guys get to a certain level.
Yeah.
And then they no longer want to do the process.
Right.
And you see how that changes where their career is almost done.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're not getting better, they're not evolving, they're not allowing themselves to actually do what got them to that level.
I mean, that happened to me in the finance field. Like, I got to a point where I could no longer be that person anymore. And I, you know, was no longer so naturally that way. And I just couldn't put the extra work in that field to become back to what I used to be. And most of that was because I simply didn't want to. In reality, you know what I mean? Like, it was, you know, and back to the 3 reasons, right? I got a 4th, and this is probably for, you know, for most, it kind of apply to anything. I felt like, why am I going to give extra work to this? I'm already giving them enough of my life. I'm not earning a paycheck, I'm trading hours of my life for money. I stopped looking at it like earning money. I started looking at it like trading biology, right? Like trading
I love that.
Consciousness for money. And I want, my consciousness is the only thing I have, so I want to spend it on something that I love.
Yeah.
But you can't do that if you're not willing to risk.
That's spot on.
It is.
That's spot on. Man, that's awesome. Little advice that you can give to anybody that's afraid to make that leap, especially right now. If you can give them any advice on maybe something that's helped you make the change. I know you just went into that a little bit, but you know, a lot of people watch the show, listen to the show, and they're always saying that like a piece of information stuck with them.
Yeah, you know, on the way down here, Tess has been bugging me to listen to something, and I listened. We started listening to it on the way here, and it helped me. Conversations with you helped me. So I think that seeking out education and mentorship, if you will, is probably really important, because you need to be able to understand that someone believes in you too, right? Or, you know, you're not on your own in the way this is done. Someone saw the value in living their life like that, and they can help you live your life like that. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I think that would be what I would, you know, listen to yourself first, because like I kept listening to myself, right? Like I couldn't commit to it, but I kept hearing it, you know? And then also I needed to know that other people believed in me.
You know, and I know that's tough because a lot of people don't have those people around them.
Yeah.
Right? So when you said seek out education, seek out mentors, you know, a piece I can add to that is that, especially with the access to so much information like online, if you don't have somebody that is directly connected to you, there's so many people that give free information that's out there. You know, you can listen to podcasts, you can listen to the audiobooks.
Yeah, well, there's people out there. I'm sure there's groups out there.
There's chat rooms. There's, you know,
you can get connected to people
absolutely
in real time.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
I'm not technological in that aspect, so I probably won't.
Right.
But I got you.
But I mean, listen, you know, that's why we do these things, because we want to give any kind of information that can help somebody take that one step forward.
Right.
You know, and I think the biggest thing is when people can connect that if somebody else has done it, I can too. Mm-hmm. And the hardest thing is that when you're only surrounded by people that have not done those things, or they're afraid to do it on their own, or they can't take that risk, it's really hard for you to see that it's possible.
Yeah.
And so once you just start feeding your mind with material education, you start talking to people, you start listening to people, and you hear that other people have gone through the exact same thing that you're going through,
right,
that you're no different. It's just that they took the risk and they decided to actually do it.
Right.
And once we do that, I think everything changes. I know I've seen you become a lot happier. I've seen your life change. And I know I have, and I've seen a lot of other people same thing. It's like once you commit, everything does get better. You might take a few financial hits, but when you exchange the money, the monetary based money for your happiness, there is no comparison. No. There, you can't even try to compare it. Like for me, you know, like I was talking about with my son, like I spend every morning with him now before I even work. That was something that I was like, no, you know, I probably do work first, make the things that I got to do, and then I can work. No. Figure out what's important.
Yeah.
What makes you happy, and then build a life around that.
Right.
And I think it's awesome, man. For me, it's really, really amazing to see the transitions that you've made. I'm excited as a friend. I'm excited as a fan of your music to see, you know, the growth and where it's continuing to go. And I know we're in a crazy time right now, but it's amazing that you've been able to turn it into something beautiful and amazing. And yeah, man, stoked to have you on the show. And
it's been a good weekend.
Yeah, it was. It's been awesome. How can they get a hold of your music?
YouTube. We are For the Kids. Our Spotify, obviously, the band is For the Kids. Our Instagram is forthekids.exe. And we are also on Facebook at For the Kids Band. So yeah, you can reach us there. Please check us out. Follow on Spotify, please, and keep an eye out for what's coming out. We do have some new releases getting ready, and hopefully, I got some ideas for some things that'll be pretty exciting. So we'll get that going out.
Cool. Well, thank you, my man, Levi Vigna from For the Kids, my brother from another mother. Good to have you on, bro. Hey guys, if you like this episode, follow the podcast and subscribe to our YouTube channel.